Okay, greetings. Welcome to our Sunday, the 5th of March 2023. Although in the thumbnail, you'll see I put the number 22, so my mistake. Live stream. The part of the week where I spend an hour and a half or so scrutinising the mainstream. It's the only time I actually look. Well, it's not the only time. One of the few times I voluntarily look at mainstream media and give a thought on it. And yeah, I appreciate you guys. Anyone that wants to tune in and share my little exploration into the world of absolute nonsense. I want to say hello to Nicholas Pitts and Midnight Scribbler, who've taken the time to comment in the live chat. Thank you for joining us tonight. Where are we going to start? Yeah, the title of the show is, of course, Terrain Claim. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm talking about the terrain we live on. There is something else in which they use the title terrain, lots of other things. I'm thinking of it in the, perhaps, I don't know, pharmaceutical, the medical sense, terrain. Although we could get onto the subject of the terrain we live on, I wouldn't ever rule that out, but that's not specifically the... I was going to call tonight's stream Touching the Terrain, or Touching on Terrain Theory. Although I'm not sure if that is an accurate title for terrain theory. If you're not familiar with it, we'll be covering that in probably the second part of the stream. So yeah, welcome. Yeah, about an hour and a half we will be going on for this evening as well. We are going to start by me checking the audio, making sure things sound alright. Yep, seems to be playing back okay. While we're here, actually, I would also like to invite, if you like the stream, before you leave and you want to hit the thumbs up button, that is always appreciated. And while we're on the subject of that, I'd also like to take the time to thank my Patreon supporter, Linda Mack, along with Nathan Oakley and Skeptic936 for contributing and supporting this live stream. If you want to do likewise, then yeah, check out the links in the description. Alright, we're going to start by looking at something I came across on Twitter. In fact, I get a lot of my inspiration from these live streams on Twitter. As I say, Sunday nights is the only time I voluntarily look at the mainstream media. The rest of the week it just gets forced upon me from, for example, social media accounts. I'll just zoom in a minute if I can. I did see something on here. Where are we? Tweets and replies. Yeah, this guy, I'm not sure how modern or recent a thing this is, but let me zoom in on that actually so you can see it properly. Oh. Right, world's leading biologist Richard Dawkins shows his compelling evidence for evolution. A cartoon of whales with feet, professing themselves, and then Romans 1:22, professing themselves to be wise, they become fools. In fact, this is something, I'm not sure how recently, Richard Dawkins suggested that dolphins were what turned into, it looks like some sort of pig or something or other. However, I did reply to this tweet by someone I been following on there a long time, GR8Believer. I will leave a link to this tweet in the description. Yeah, and I pointed out this is a document I came up with years ago, probably about 2018, where I kind of noticed that if you took the body, the skeleton of a whale or a dolphin, add a couple of legs onto it, plus a different skull, then what do you get? Dinosaurs. That yeah, there's a lot of yeah, I'm sure we've all been taken to see exhibitions of like dinosaur bones and stuff where they would have us believe that they've got genuine skeletons. That isn't actually what we get. When we go to any exhibition, any of the bones are literally just stones, fossils, and from them they take plaster of Paris replicas and build them up, although not always as they'd seem. Greetings to KG in the chat, thanks for joining us. By the way, Sunday nights are I guess you'd call not a free-for-all, but a open to suggestions. Whereas my other streams in the week are a lot shorter, Sunday I do have time to investigate any stories or subjects that people want us to look at. There's one or two that I've got lined up already. But yeah, I'm always open to anything, because I miss most of the stuff. Anyway, from the Great Dinosaur Hoax, I reminded me of a headline that I'd seen in the corner of something about new analysis of ancient human proteins. Hang on, can I make this page look a bit better? Apparently, tiny traces of protein lingering in the bones and teeth of ancient humans could soon transform scientists' efforts to unravel the secrets of the evolution of our species. Apparently little specks of dust that they get out of probably plaster of Paris skulls, they're gonna convince us that they can tell us all about our creation. Unfortunately, half of the very famous skulls or skeletons that we get presented with are about as far from genuine archaeological finds. They are all just, it will maybe be one tiny thumb, or a forearm bone, for example, and they'll tell you everything about that person based on that one bone: its age, its sex, its the time from which it was alive, what colour hair it had, crazy stuff. But yeah, they're also going to tell us how we all came to exist. See if it seems to detract from another possibility about how we all got here. Researchers believe that a new technique known as proteomics could allow them to identify the protein. So none of this is guaranteed. Identify the proteins from which our predecessors' bodies were constructed, and brings new insight to the past 2 million years of humanity's history. Do you think it's really 2 million? Do you think human history has been chronicled for the last 2 million years? Unfortunately not. Not at all. Analysis of the microscopic remnants could then help solve major evolutionary mysteries, such as the identity of the common ancestors of Homo sapiens. They're going to actually give you a couple of identities. They're going to draw up some interesting looking part human, part ape creatures, such as the Neanderthal. The ramifications of the technology would mirror the impact of the recently developed technology of ancient DNA analysis, which, over the past 20 years, has helped uncover a dramatic secrets about humanity's past. These include the discovery that many modern humans possess Neanderthal genes, and that the two species must have interbred at some point over the last 100,000 years. What do you think Neanderthal genes are? Do you think they've given us a Neanderthal and said these are exactly the genetic makeup of this creature? Or are they full of rubbish? As I said, does this story appear to detract in any way from another narrative? Again, one that is based purely on faith. Well, yeah, purely on trust and belief, and that is the story, that is the account in Genesis, which it is, in my opinion, a historical account. Accurate, more accurate in numbers than any of this stuff. Interbreeding over the last 100,000 years. Well, the book of Genesis, well, the Holy Scriptures, reading them right back, will give us a timeline. Am I right? It's about 6,000 years, or I'd have to have a look. When was the first king of Israel? I should have a... I'm sure it was like minus 900 or something, but we'd have to have a look at a timeline, which I'm just having a glance now to see if I've got one to hand, but maybe I do not. I'll get that one next time. Anyway, yeah, as I say, far more accurate than the 100,000 years. Yeah, the account of Genesis is unchanging. I mean, with these discoveries, every time they say, oh, the last 20 years we've just made this miraculous discovery where we were able to tell you DNA of particular people and how far back they lived. Related, pit find in Germany reveals how Neanderthals hunted huge elephants. I would love to read it. Let's find out. Oh, it's a video, right? Okay. KG says, do you think there were giants? I do. Again, going back to the book of Genesis, and we are told about the Nephilim. We are also told about people such as, I don't know the original Hebrew name, but Goliath was how he went in the modern translations of... Again, that was... I'm pretty sure that was Genesis. So giants, yeah, I'm not convinced, so I will say, by some of these skeleton finds that we get, where you see people uncovering. I would love to think some of them are legitimate, but when you can see how easily they can fabricate images of dinosaurs and creating artificial images of humans. But there are some interesting points made. There was a YouTuber, I am subscribed to him, I'm sure I am, but I've not watched his stuff lately. I can't think of the guy's name. I will have to have a look at those. Oh, UAP, underrated actual physicist, he's called, and he's done some really interesting video into the buildings that would have been around, say, a couple of 100 years ago, and just how large all the doors and windows are, and it does make you think how different. I mean, buildings will of course hold secrets, and there are a lot of accounts of old buildings just being demolished. I know I often talk about Bath. We could go to the maps at some point. There was a place in Twerton owned by, I'm not sure, it was, and I believe around at the start of the 1900s they paid the local people to just demolish it, and even to the point of smashing up all the bricks. Anyway, yeah, but if you see pictures of the house, it was ginormous. So yeah, that would be, for those that have discussed giants, one of the best ones I've seen is, as I say, UAP. Let's see if we can find his YouTube channel. I will not steal any of his I won't plagiarize any of his work, but we will share a link to his channel. Here we go. Yeah, this guy's done some very interesting videos. I am still subscribed to him. Let's see. Yeah, he covers a lot of stuff, but I'll put a link to his channel and put it in the live chat. UA, and of course I will put this link in the description of tonight's video as well for anyone watching without access to the live chat. KG says, I hear they're hiding skeletons. Who knows? Well, let's see what... I don't know if you got any links to any good images. But here's what I mean. This is a... Yeah, this is, I'm guessing, a museum that have put these humans on display. Whoa, that's a bit extreme. What we're specifically looking for is the giants. Right, what's this one say? The giant skeleton is that of John Asen, who lived in the late 19th century. He was a circus freak with a height of 7'1" and was often chosen for side roles in Hollywood movies. 7'1", yep, that's pretty ginormous by modern day standards. So who's this next to him? That's obviously not the skeleton of a full-grown adult. Perhaps that was someone else from the circus where these people were part of. Midnight says they chuck the skeletons in the ocean. Do you know what? Recently I had a funeral of a very close relative at the start of the year. Well, yeah, midway through January. And it was very interesting that by our own choice we didn't ever see the body after the person passed on, but as far as the skeleton going into the coffin, seeing them, we were never given an opportunity to see that. And you never know. Anyway, yeah, so unless you're specifically talking about giant skeletons get chucked in the ocean, that would be such a tragedy if that is happening. Because yeah, again, these are like pretty much fossilized by the look of it. Is that just someone very, who's very clever with a hammer and chisel and can chisel out bones from rock masses? Exhumed from Yellowstone River in China. What year was this article? They haven't got a date anywhere, which is a bit annoying. I'll try and zoom it in for you. Yeah, all these, any skeletons or bones that go on display are always done for obviously commercial purposes, and when that is the motivation, I think you do have to question a lot of things. It's widely known that, right, again, we haven't got a year for when this was, perhaps they'll reveal it in the article. China is not a country known for producing exceptionally tall human beings. In fact, the national height average for men is currently 5'8". It's widely known that over time humans have grown taller. Oh, are we sure about that? With each generation? I'm going to call BS on that. I know that is generally considered that we're getting bigger, but I don't trust that. A bit like saying the climate's getting warmer. Well, it gets warmer every day anyway. Oh, as with each generation we become better at hunting. Are they joking? They're telling us we're becoming... It's widely known that over time humans have grown taller with each generation as we become better at hunting. Well, I don't think your average human is better at hunting than maybe they would have been, unless they mean on a mass scale where animals are intensively farmed and controlled. Then okay, in that sense, yeah, hunting methods have come on leaps and bounds since the days when we would humanely well, as humanely as you can kill an animal, but at least it was one that would have had access to a real life in the wild rather than on a farm. But in that sense, I don't believe we're any better at hunting now than we used to be, and then better at nourishing ourselves. Do you think we're now at the pinnacle of human nourishment, with all their very enjoyable, what's that product that they banned in America instead of sugar, aspartame or something? Do you think we're now at Right, just doing a quick audio check there. In fact, I am unfortunately going to have to hit the cough button for 1 second. Thank you for your patience there. Right, Asian populations are generally shorter than many others. Some scientists say this may be due to a diet historically low in protein. Someone must have forgotten to lock up the meat 5,000 years ago, because archaeologists have just uncovered a big bastard skeleton in northern China. This is a website called osman.com. I'm not sure. First time I've come across it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not reporting something that's legit. The skeletons were exhumed in tombs in northeast China in the region of the Yellow Valley River, and humans would have been nearly a foot taller than these humans would have been nearly a foot taller than the rest of the population, who scientists predict, that's not what scientists do, would have averaged 5'2". The giant skeletons that were discovered are thought to have once stood between 5'11" and 6'3". Not exactly giant, is it? Sounds pretty bog standard. This is just based on bone structure. If he was a living person, his height would certainly exceed 1.9 meters. Okay, for me, that's stretching it when they call it a big bastard of a skeleton. 6'3"? Not exactly. Of course, you also get Smithsonian admits destroying thousands of giant human skeletons. This is a website called Before It's News. Let's have a look at this one. Smithsonians admit to the destruction of thousands of giant skeletons in the early 1900s. A Supreme Court ruling has forced the Smithsonian Institution to release classified papers dating from the early 1900s that prove the organizations were involved in a major historical cover-up of evidence, showing giant human remains in the tens of thousands had been uncovered all across America, and were ordered to be destroyed by high-level administrators to protect the mainstream chronology of human evolution at the time. Yeah, that is a highly protected thing. The allegations stemming from, well, at the minute they're allegations, well, according to this article from 2014, so whether it's come on since then, I'm not sure. During the case, new elements were brought to light that several whistleblowers admitted to the existence of documents that allegedly prove the destruction of tens of thousands of human skeletons reaching between 6 and 12 feet in height. Yeah, 12 feet. That is what was Goliath said to be? I think they did it in, was he measured in cubits? Of course, there were cubit. It was as long as the person's arm was that measures them, so cubits were, I guess, more subjective perhaps, unless there was an established measurement for a cubit. If you don't know, a cubit is from the tip of your elbow to the tip of your middle finger. The turning point in the case was when a 1.3 meter long human femur bone was shown as evidence. And someone... We're not getting any actual names here, are we? James Sherwood, who is a spokesman. The US Supreme Court has since forced the institution to publicly release classified information, anything related to the destruction of evidence pertaining to the mound builder culture and to relative to human skeletons. The public release of these documents will help archaeologists to re-evaluate current theories about human evolution and help us greater our understanding of the mound building center in America. Have they got any actual images of the documents? That would be interesting. Here was the original source. Right, looks like we're reading the same article again. By the way, the title of tonight's stream is obviously touching on terrain, or that's what I was going to call it. I think I called it terrain things in the end. But we will be covering that in the second half of the stream. Right, possible hoax by worldnewsdailyreport.com. I still believe that some of the information is real, but there are many discrepancies. Okay, well, I'd love to see the documents if they're available. I mean, they, to me, don't look like anything other than something, I don't know, could that have been chiseled out with rock? Unless it's still covered. Yep, they certainly make for very interesting pictures. And, as I said, if you look at buildings from... Let me see. Again, I'm local to Bath, so if I go to somewhere like... Let's see, the pump rooms. See how large the exits were originally on these ancient buildings. Okay. Yeah, I mean, for one thing, the ridiculously high size of the room. If you look at... Let's bring this image up. If you can see someone standing up, you could probably fit about 10 people, one on top of the other. If you look at the size of this doorway here, just on the left of the image. Let's see, can we mark it up? And it's overly extravagant to have a room as big as that and not actually have a need for it. Now, I believe that being called the pump room, this building was really linked to the Roman baths, which are right next door and right next to the Bath Abbey. So they were obviously some sort of pump room. KG mentions Tartaria. Again, not something I've looked at closely. Yeah, look at the average height of the person. I bet coming through this door, they were that. You know, your average person probably, when they're stood against the door, comes up about here, I would think. And yet... the door reaches a good 5 feet higher, perhaps. So yeah, the old buildings kind of do look like they were built for ridiculously tall people. But who knows? Yeah, what was the house in Twerton I was mentioning that they had to absolutely... I think it was called Car House? No, that's not right, actually. In fact, bear with me 1 second. I'm just going to hide my screen for a minute and have a quick look for something. Right, is this the right one? Okay, I believe we have what we're looking for. Okay, this is what used to be Car House. I don't believe that is quite... Here we are. This one here is, yeah, apparently this building was completely demolished. Any kind of... Yeah, any indication that it ever existed, completely wiped off by the locals who were paid to absolutely trash the place. Yeah, huge, great big doorway. I guess it's hard to put into perspective, but if you see the size of the bench, again, let me get my red pen out. In fact, yeah, if you look at the bench just here, how, you know, let's draw a person on. And we'll try and work out how big they are. I'm guessing your average height person would come up to here, into this building that was ruthlessly destroyed, despite probably being, well, I don't believe they had listed buildings back then. When this one was trashed. Let's see, what was the story with that one? Joseph Randall. Okay, whether it will mention the place was taken down, I'm not sure. In 1911, it was... Yeah, I would have to look into that one and find out when that house was actually destroyed. Right. KG mentions Tartaria. Tartaria. Again, not something I have closely examined. Is it a landmass then that is no longer with us? Tatari was a blanket term used in Western Europe literature for a vast part of Asia bound by the sea on the northern borders. 13th to the 19th century, and in some sources it became the most common name for Central Asia. Right, Tataria map. Yeah, maybe Wikipedia isn't the best place for trying to find some of this information. The mystery of an empire lost in history. Conspiracy theorists have been researching about this online and come up with some wild ideas. This is a look into the actual facts and the info that is available about the medieval country. That's good. Right, story circulating on the internet regarding a country lost in the chronicles of history, buried in the sands of time. A dig in old maps dating back as far as the 15th century. What intrigued the internet was a declassified document by the CIA which mentions the deletion of this country's history, which seems to have been located in the land of modern Russia, Serbia, Asia. According to the old world maps, at times it reached the borders of China and Mongolia. Little is known about the people inhabiting the land at that time, and due to the lack of information, people are still speculating if it was an area or an actual country. Europeans during the 19th century and earlier seem to have called Asian areas Tartary before they explored them, regarding them in greater detail. So, this is an excerpt of the classified CIA document. Let's see. Take a matter of history. Right. On the 9th of August 1944, the Central Committee of the Communist Party in Moscow issued a directive order ordering the party's Tartar Provincial Committee to proceed a scientific revision of the history of Tartaria to liquidate serious shortcomings and mistakes of a nationalistic character. In other words, Tartaria's history was to be rewritten, let us be frank, was to be falsified in order to eliminate references to Great Russian aggression. Gotcha. Right, I should leave a link really to these articles if anyone wants to look at them in closer detail. As I say, I'm only going on for an hour and a half tonight, so I will be encouraging you guys to check this stuff out for yourself. KJ, I'm always told I'm a conspiracy theorist. I guess people would label me that as well, but yeah, although it's meant in a derogatory term, it's not like there's not a huge amount of interest in a lot of the things that come from what people would consider conspiracy theorists. They make an awful lot of good points, in my opinion. Right, link to Tartaria article. But yeah, certainly thank you for the suggestion, KG. Right, and they always take you back to Wikipedia. The story of the Mongols, whom we call the Tartars. Okay, and here is the map of where it was. Let's have a look. Of course, that's far too tiny to read. Do they have actual... Right, let's have a look here. Part of Asia and Europe, they made it sound like. Hopefully I'm looking in the right area. The Grand Tartaria, right here. Here is the United Kingdom, Europe, and then, yeah, just here, Tartaria, surrounded by Empire du Mughal, Judea. Well, Judea is right by that. Actually, in the Holy Scriptures, what would be considered the New Testament, the book of like the Corinthians, they mention the district of Asia. Again, this is in the modern translation, and they're not talking about Asia as we know it, so they're talking about supposedly a much smaller part of what I guess we call the Middle East. I don't know if that's the right actual location to it, but yeah, that is, because that's something that I always considered, that what we're told was where modern day Jerusalem and all these places, Israel, is it actually the original location? Because of course the Jews that live there was a big kind of removal campaign, obviously, which was part of the Second World War, and why all the Jews ended up being given a land. And when the Germans brought them together and tried to carry out this exercise of sending the Jewish people to Israel, or what they were now calling Israel, previously Palestine, they suggested they were all being put in concentration camps. So, although originally I believe America was involved in the purchase of modern day Israel, as it were, but this map would back up that was indeed where, yeah, these old maps are certainly curious. What happened there? We lost it. Again, I did put a link in the description though. Right. Okay, Nathan Oakley, greetings. Welcome to tonight's live stream. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, if you are just joining us, we have so far went from talking about dolphins and whale bones being passed off as Tyrannosaurus Rexes. That then got us on to how they can take bits of dust from the bones from the fossils of bones and tell us about creation and how we started off. And then we got onto giants and Tartaria. But I am drastically ignorant on that subject. I'm sure there are people that have made some wonderful videos on it. I shared a link to the channel UAP, as he's made some very interesting ones on that particular subject. Right, in the week, if we go back to my Twitter account, let's see. Yeah, I did release a video about Constance Martin, and I wanted to make a point on that one. That has anyone noticed in that story about Constance Martin how there appeared to be two completely different images used of the couple involved? If you're not aware, Constance Martin is an actual location. Right, yeah, we saw two mugshots or two images. Let's see what images it gives us. If you haven't seen my short, by the way, yeah, this one. Okay, here's one image of the couple. Otherwise, why would they be showing this guy? View image. And are they telling us these are the same people? These two Afro-Caribbean gentlemen. Are we to believe that's never meant to be the same person? Who knows? They look absolutely nothing like each other. I mean, that looked photoshopped to heck. Look how blocky those... Well, again, what an absolute rubbish picture that is. And then it looks like perhaps this was the one they were originally going to go with. And then someone said, you can't give the public that. And look how terribly grainy, CGI and blocky all this is. I assume you can see it. Anyway, not surprisingly, they ended up saying we're not using that image, give us a better one, and this is what they came up with. Again, the woman has a very dead look about her. Do you know what I mean? There's almost no life in that photo, and I guess a lot of photos do appear like that. But yeah, maybe I should look into that and just because, as I say, I haven't looked hugely closely at this story, other than just doing a quick glance to see. I mean, maybe there are different people involved, but I'm not sure. Let's see if the Independent lets us read their article without having to... yeah. If we did look at this story, I think it pretty much broke on Wednesday or Thursday. So Thursday evening we glanced at it as it was absolutely dominating the news. And yeah, I put a video up about it. If you've not seen it, then yeah, why not check them out. Okay, yeah, by the way, tonight's title, Touching Terrain, was the name I was going to give it, and then I ended up going with Terrain Things. Although, yeah, I went with Terrain Claim. Yeah, what we're talking about might not necessarily, it might be a bit deceptive. I don't know, as I said earlier, I'm not opposed to talking about the terrain on which we live, but that's not necessarily what this title is referencing. Sorry if the clickbait got you there on that one. But I'm always happy to cover any subject suggested in the chat, so if anyone has much to say on that one. Yeah, I do feel like really I should try and find out who the different people are in this story. Runaway aristocrat Constant was groomed by a Nigerian sect leader. Yeah, apparently the baby was missing 55 days, in case you were wondering whether there was any, besides the absolutely terrible picture quality of the images they give us of these people, which is for me a big giveaway. If you're after anything deeper than that, if you're looking for the numbers as they always seem to come up, then they squeezed in a 55, and by the time they go to court she'll probably be 36, so there'll be plenty of room for that. Either way, nasty story. Of course the mainstream have got it down, like a timeline, an absolute timeline that they're released into the public before it goes to court. Surely timelines are the sort of things they draw up for court cases. They don't immediately hand it over to whoever came up with this. I like how their sources all happen to be media outlets. Like, for example, Constant Martin was... Oh, they're the people sharing the information, I see. I thought they were the sources. They were going to link us to, say, an announcement by the police, for whatever that's worth. But they're not. They are... they're media outlets. So it all happened between about the 2nd and the 28th. Right, Mark Gordon, Brighton. Let's have a look for that guy. Mark Gordon, there we go. Let's see which of those two people it was. It's pretty clearly going to be... It's the same images come up, not surprisingly. So that's Constant... Oh, Constant Martin is the name of the aristocrat. Did I say it was a place? Gosh, I was talking some rubbish. It's the name of... Yeah, so... Who's this guy in the image? Because it certainly isn't the same person. Right, okay, we are going to go to our intermission, and then when we come back, we'll be looking at the headline about touching on terrain. If yeah, still got any times to get in any requests you might want to make, and yeah, as well as the headline article, we've got a few other things we will touch on before we finish, which will be about 11:30. So yeah, thanks to KG, Nathan Oakley, Midnight Scribbler and Nicholas Pitts for taking the time to comment in the live chat. If anyone else is tuning in and you want to say hello, it is always good to know you are out there. Okay, when we come back, we will be carrying on with more mainstream media scrutiny, as well as, well, scrutinising everything that comes from them. Mainly what they say, I guess you could say. Right, what's our intermission video? It is from September 2022, where I ask, are ITV baiting the audience? How long does it go on for? Right, it's 6.5 minutes, so if I'm not back in 6.5 minutes, it will start replaying itself. But don't worry about that. Okay, yeah, enjoy my video, and if you're still with us, thanks for tuning in this far. You've only got another 30 minutes or so to go. The Price of Adam, greetings, thanks for joining us tonight. KG asks, what was this about missing baby? My goodness, you're not from the UK, are you, KG? Of course you're not. There was a supposedly an aristocrat went missing. Just for you, I will put my screen on again. Hang on. We are going to go to our intermission in a minute. Yeah, apparently a baby was missing for 55 days, but as you can see from the already constructed timeline, that's the 55 days. It only became a big news story like a couple of days before they arrested this person, Constant Martin and Mark Gordon. 28th. What date was the 28th? Let's have a look. That would have been Tuesday, yes. So that was 2 days before I covered it in our last live stream. And over the weekend I put up a shorts video about it. So, yeah, check out my shorts. Right, okay, we're going to play our intermission. When we come back, we will be carrying on with the stream for probably about another half hour, maybe 45 minutes at the most. Okay, yeah, here is your opportunity to refill your drinks or do whatever you need to do. You've got about 6.5 minutes. Okay, thanks for tuning in so far, and I'll be back soon. Catch you in a minute. Hi everyone, I recently came across this story. It actually goes back to like 2010, I believe. And as with most things in the press, I got a few problems with it. It doesn't quite sit right. Canadian journalist tells horrible stories of torture, rape over 15-month ordeal in Somalia. This is Amanda Lindhout, who, along with her kind of boyfriend, kind of colleague, they haven't worked that out yet, were both kidnapped in Somalia and held for 15 months until a ransom was raised using crowdfunding. And they've now decided to bring it back up, just remind everyone, give them both a bit of publicity. Like I said, parts of the story don't sound quite right. One thing that keeps coming up is, as always, the numbers. 15, for some reason keeps coming up. 15-month ordeal. The ransom was for 1.5 million. Main negotiator, the man who had orchestrated the kidnapping of the ransom, Ali Omar Adder, that snake Adder, was sentenced to 15 years in jail. So for whatever reason, 15 keeps coming up. How you'd expect someone to appear after going through such an ordeal and how they talk about it compared to what you actually get never quite matches. First people we'll look at is Amanda and her mother. Now listen to this woman talking. She was repeatedly raped for 15 months, okay? Listen how happily she talks about this.
It was confronting in a way, reading the actual literal interactions between my mom and the man that I knew as Adam, to really understand like what a bizarre reality she was living.
Bizarre reality, you got that right. Look at what's going on with this guy's ears, very straight edges. Terrible picture as always, but anyway, let's let him carry on.
It was also new to me, a lot of it. And even though, yes, we have had countless conversations over the years about our individual experiences, to see it all put together like that, the incredible use of transcripts, like as my mom was able to piece together this amazing story of courage and hope. I mean, it was our story, her story, and one that I knew, and yet I found myself deeply moved, surprised yet again at the resiliency that like she holds, that represents, I think, what we all have inside of us.
Nice plug here for the mother's book. They all did books, by the way. Anyone who had a part in this story got a book deal.
The ability to get through the impossible.
Tell me a little bit about getting a call where...
Right, the mother, look at that big smile on her face, okay? And now see how quickly she snaps into sad mother mode.
Somebody, your daughter, is pleading for her life, they're torturing me.
Oh. Look at that smile. There you go, big smile. Her daughter's pleading for her life.
It's a hard one to talk about.
Great acting.
Was extremely distressful, of course. I was able to say what I needed to say without breaking down while I was on the call, but after the call, I had to make another call, and then after that, I started throwing up and just found myself on the floor. It was really difficult.
Body language, look at her hands. Is this the hands of somebody who's being open and honest? Watch how they fidget.
But then I realized I had to get myself back up and continue to fight for her to come home.
Right, that's enough of this nonsense. We'll go on to Amanda's kind of boyfriend. In some cases they say it's her boyfriend, in others they are not so clear. Here he is.
So I'm here with Nigel Brennan, who has written a memoir called The Price of Life, which was published in June 2011. Nigel is a photographer, and does say he's not a writer, but he has written this book, and it details the experiences he had in Somalia in captivity. So Nigel, welcome. Thank you for talking to me. Could you tell me a little bit about why you chose to write your story?
For me, the book was more a cathartic purpose. So probably a selfish reason in some respects, but during captivity, obviously went through 462 days of not allowing myself to feel any emotion, because I was obviously terrified about having a mental breakdown. So coming home, I did a lot of work with a psychologist when I got back to where my parents lived, and she just suggests that I actually write something down for my own historical purpose.
Get ready, he's going to give something away with a smile here about his real reasons for writing the book.
And then I thought about it and talked with my sister, who was heavily involved with getting me home, and my sister-in-law about the possibility of the three of us writing a book together. So certainly didn't write the book for monetary gain.
See that? Certainly didn't write the book for monetary gain. Big smile.
You don't make money out of books, or most authors don't make a lot of money out of writing a book, but
yeah, like I say, the story is very bizarre. We'll read about an attempted escape that they did, and again, see if it makes sense to you. Very weird. Also, how they were even captured. Right, they also claim that they were there for humanitarian reasons, but then actually they were there as journalists and photographers. So again, that doesn't make sense. Right, we were going to an internally displaced people's camp. That was going to be the big story that we were in Somalia for. We were on a big open highway road, and we see a car pull over off to the side up ahead. Within minutes, what was unfolded was like something out of a nightmare. So there was about a dozen armed men who had been hiding behind that parked car, and the next thing I knew, I'd been abducted. Now, so you see a car pulled over, and what, they managed to... You're on a big open highway, can't you just drive around them? I don't get that bit. Anyway, let's read their brave attempt to escape. Then, after 5 months, Lindhout and Brennan attempted to escape. The pair managed to loosen several bricks and jump out of a window before fleeing in a nearby crowded mosque, only to be pursued by their armed captors. Now, what's the point in loosening several bricks if you're then just going to jump out the window? Again, that bit doesn't make sense. And she then tells a story about how in the mosque a woman tried to rescue her, but okay, greetings. Now, the eagle-eyed among you would have noticed that that wasn't the correct video. Our ITV bet in the audience. That was my one about Amanda Lindhout being a fraud, and we watched it in the pre-show, so if you've had to sit through that twice, I do apologise. just as well actually, because that video was a few minutes longer, and I was confronted. We've got a poorly cat at the minute, and he's been unwell, so I had a bit of a mess to clear up during the intermission, so I needed those extra few minutes. But my apologies. If you haven't seen this before, either scroll back to the pre-show. About 5 minutes in, we start watching this video. You can watch it to the end. Let's see, perhaps we'll play out with the video about ITV baiting the audience. Right, yeah, we're going to carry on with our subject. The price of Adam in the live chat mentioned the watching Hunters on Amazon, saying it's perfect propaganda. Not something I've seen. I'm guessing is that about historical humans? I will certainly give it a look. I do remember thinking when Amazon and Netflix started up that perhaps we'll right, let's lose that text. Perhaps we'll it'll be, it's a break from the mainstream. It isn't. There's as much propaganda go on to Amazon Prime and Netflix as go on to every other TV offering, as it were. Inspired by true events. Yeah, again, that's always a bit of a suspect one. A bit like if you ever see the words. Oh, I'm just going to check my audio before we carry on. Yeah, I'm hearing a bit of buzzing actually. That might be caused by my phone being too near the thing. Right. Bear with me. Yeah, it's a bit like seeing whenever there's a current news event, they'll always do an article saying what you need to know, and as far as I'm concerned, it's just them saying what we want you to believe. A real-life event, Hunters follows a diverse band of Nazi hunters in 1977 New York, who discover that hundreds of escaped Nazis are living in America, and so they do what any badass vigilante squad would do. They set out on a bloody quest for revenge and justice, but they soon discover a far-reaching conspiracy and must race against time to thwart the Nazis' new genocidal plans. Sounds amazing. It sounds entertaining, but that's another thing with Prime. Watch for £0. Again, we do pay for Netflix, but remember getting Prime on like a free trial for 3 months or something, and despite having like the Prime, as they call it, you still had to pay more for like pretty much all of the content they put on there, and I was kind of shocked by that. So I see it's something for free now, but yeah, Nazis, if they really wanted to search to, if they wanted to hunt Nazis, then of course there was a lot used in the space program. Am I right in thinking that they were deployed? If it's true that escaped, I guess people who had formerly worked for the German military probably were given jobs elsewhere. What we were told about these people, of course, I don't think it's popular to kind of push what history accepts as a Nazi is. I was under the impression that it is I heard someone say, right, origin of word. Apparently it is a combination of nationalists and Zion. I don't know how correct that is. Etymology. I don't know if that is exactly where it came from. Nationalist socialism. But is Zionists mentioned as what the ZI stands for? the nickname Nakshi from the masculine proper noun name of German for Ignatius. A foolish person. What? A political party took on a word meaning a foolish person, clumsy or awkward. It was a popular name in Catholic Austria, and according to one source, a Nazi was a generic name in the German Empire for the soldiers of Austria and Hungary. Interesting. An older use of the Nazi for the National Social is attested to Germany from 1903, but EWDS does not think it contributed to the word as applied to Hitler and his followers. Yeah. In National Socialists, which date from 1923. Okay. So nowhere does the ZI get a reference. Let's look for that specific nationalists, Zionists. Yeah. Let's see what Adam's saying. I see anything as just the government now, but I don't even know which government. And it's good TV, but this is the most I think I'll be able to talk about it. If they wanted to hunt Nazis, maybe look in the places you put them all. Very true. Yeah, I don't think it would be a popular... why do far right white nationalists support Zionism? Zionism is a belief that humans can create the... is it something to do with a temple? Originally Solomon's temple, destroyed and rebuilt by... I can't think who rebuilt it, but it was then destroyed again, as predicted by Yahushua. And talk of building a third temple in... We did touch upon, how original is what is modern day Israel. But anywhere. Let's see. Okay, why do far rights support Zionism? Good question. Yeah, we were touching on this earlier. Modern day is... Because, if I'm not mistaken, they were... when Israel, as it were, Palestine was given back to the Jews, they were originally going to send them to... Where was that other place? I can't think where they were going to send them now, but it's Madagascar, I think it was. And then decided against it and suddenly changed all their plans. Of course, some would say that what they called the Holocaust, where lots of Jewish people were rounded up, was actually because they were supposed to be moving them onto Israel and taking them out of Europe. But they would rather you believe that the pictures of all these people in buses, they weren't just drastically overcrowded public transport. It was people being taken to their death. Right. With the emergence of Zionism in the late 19th century, Jews started emigrating to Ottoman Palestine. After the World War I, this is of course Wikipedia, so this will be exactly as presented. After World War I, Palestine was put under the British mandatory rule, and tensions between the Yishuv and the Palestine Arab population constantly grew. Around the time Israel absorbed waves of Jewish immigration with a sizable number of Palestine Palestinians were expelled or fled. And then Israel has occupied neighbouring territories. So what does it say about when it was returned to... Perhaps I should have started reading that article a lot earlier. Unfortunately, we certainly won't have time to go through this whole Wikipedia article on it, but I imagine a lot of your own... Yeah, Israel is located in the region historically known as the Land of Israel, Palestine or Canaan, or the Holy Land, which is regarded as the birthplace of the Jewish people. Yeah, I'm sure there was a plan to send them to Madagascar. Let's have a look. Jews to Madagascar. Right, the Madagascar plan. Again, Wikipedia is everyone's favourite one-stop for unquestionable news. The Madagascar plan was to forcibly relocate the Jewish population of Europe to the island of Madagascar, proposed by the Nazi German government. Apparently it's not as sinister that... I mean, it wasn't... Who knows, right? Head of the Jewish department of the German Foreign Office proposed the idea in 1940, shortly before the fall of France. The proposal called for the handing over of control of Madagascar. The idea of resetting Polish Jews was investigated by the government in 1937, so it was already planned by the Polish. Didn't the Polish have concentration camps as well? Right. 3rd of June, 3663. Even back in these old days, they would squeeze those numbers in. So, okay, it's being said that it was a plan by Nazi Germany. I'm not sure how true that is, but I guess what Wikipedia tells us must be agreed upon. Let's see. Okay, oh, there is even a article about how the Nazis plan to do it. I see. Right, so were not a lot of the Jews that were going to go to Madagascar ended up going to, like, Israel? Who knows? Okay, this wasn't going to be this isn't... Yeah, I've so far not touched upon the title of tonight's video, which is Touching Terrain. It was going to be Touching Terrain. That's how I've got it in my head, but I think I called it something slightly different, about terrain claims or terrain things. What are we talking about when we say terrain? I saw this article about... Where was he? Matt Hancock. I'm sure we've all seen it. It's one of those articles absolutely designed to annoy the crap out of you, as most articles seem to be, about how he wanted to frighten the pants off the public. Leaked messages show... These aren't leaked at all. Controlled releases, I'm absolutely sure. Because it was never suggested for 1 second during the time when this was in reference to, about when Rishi Sunak said eat out to help out. Constantly trying to talk about the spread of something or another. That is where we get onto the subject of terrain. I'm not sure if I'm using the term correctly, but germ theory, as it were, is the idea of such things as what I refer to as BS19. That's not to say people don't get ill, don't catch colds, but what are the chances that, like, pretty much everything that happened from 2020 through till the start of 2022, well, and is still going on realistically, people are still being requested to stick bits of crap over their face. apparently to protect everyone, which is about as insane as it could possibly get. If you genuinely think by putting a paper mask on you're protecting anyone, then you are hugely mistaken. How do I get rid of this video playing in the bottom corner? Close. Right, we should have immersive reader. Let's see, do we still get... Yeah, these messages getting leaked from December 2020, talking about how stringent lockdowns should be, or so yeah, germ theory as it's called, or germ claim. Is there an alternative? Could it be that when everyone in the room seems to be coughing and spluttering, you can spend as much time with those people as you want and come out and not get anything, and then a couple of days later you seem to walk past someone with a bit of a cold and then you pick one up? Is that because things are actually, pathogens are flying through the air? Let's see, what was the terrain? We've looked at this before. Where and I believe it's got its value. For example, a lot of illnesses are not caused by things spreading around. Now this, no doubt, germs which cause diseases, I doubt very much this is an image of a germ under a microscope, but who knows. Apologies for the small text, by the way. Let's see, does that help? Right, many diseases are caused by infectious agents or germs. Yeah, wouldn't that be bacterial? These agents are referred to as microorganisms. Germ theory of the disease states that diseases are caused by these organisms, and it was introduced and proven by scientists, among them the great Louis Pasteur, who proved that the germ theory of the disease is correct. This is what you get when you click the first link on Bing. Well, if you scroll past Wikipedia and then hit the second link. Terrain theory states that diseases are results of our internal environment and its ability to maintain homeostasis against outside threats. These two theories are considered to be equally important for our health. Therefore, it's really important to know germ theory and terrain theory, and that germ theory states that germs are causative agents, while terrain says it's internal environments. Yeah, I don't personally think they've ever proven that a bug will jump from one host to another, but I'm sure they will tell you that they have. The price of Adam says, I was in ER yesterday. I went on with a mask, but they let me take it off. I was like, yes, progress. Yeah, the last time, well, not the last time, one of the last times I was in A&E in December. Was it December? Yeah, November and December. I had to go into A&E like 3 times in a row. Well, 3 times in quite quick succession. And on one of the... No, it was twice, sorry, not 3 times, twice. And the first time I was waiting for someone, with someone, and was asked to put a mask on, and flat out refused. I was challenged as to, what is your... When I said I was exempt, they demanded to know my exemption, which I refused to give them. So I'm glad there's progress in your part of the country or the world, but here, at least back in December, it was... Yeah, you could expect to be harassed and hounded. So it's surprising how quickly that any progress can be swiped from under your feet. And you also say you can't trust anything. It's all cartoons now. They literally put nothing but cartoons out. Very true. This goes into other other things I've suggested are cartoon and CGI'd, such as celebrity babies. That's one of my beliefs. Yeah, no. Yeah, I think I'm not. Yeah, when you look at like leprosy, was that meant to be an airborne disease? One of the things, again, I'm pretty sure it's in the Book of Exodus, or where the priests are given instructions on checking people for leprosy, and at no time are they told, make sure you put a mask on, make sure you got an apron on, wear rubber gloves. They're just told to inspect the leprosy carrying population. Let's see, I mean, does leprosy even exist anymore? Yeah, sorry, this is where it might get a bit gruesome, so if you don't want to see people with leprosy, you might want to avert your eyes now. I'm curious though whether they say it's something that passes from one person to another. Right, leprosy is a chronic infectious disease caused... Yeah, so they're claiming that it can be passed on from one person to another, as it's a type of bacteria. The disease predominantly affects the skin and peripheral nerves. But it's curable with multi-drug therapy. Leprosy is reported from all 6 World Health Organization regions. Okay, we're not going to look too closely at leprosy. I'm just curious whether it was believed to be a disease that was passed on. A&E. It used to be Accident and Emergency, but they've now changed the name of it, unfortunately. But yeah, sorry, Accident and Emergency. It's what you would call ER, I guess, which is emergency room. Or either that or a program on American TV, hey. Right, yeah, so as much as it might have seemed that I was going to talk about the terrain of the earth that we live on, I hope no one feels too gypped that I didn't cover that subject. Maybe it's something, I mean, there are a lot of wonderful people out there who do cover that subject in a really thorough way, and for the time being at least, I'm going to leave it to those who are well equipped to discuss the nature of Earth. But for now, the only terrain I was planning on talking about tonight was terrain theory, if that's the right name, but I called it terrain claim. So, yeah, apologies on that one. Right, were there any other subjects we were going to look at? Again, I think it was in my last live stream, we looked at Prince Harry being homeless. Goodness me, they love promoting this book. You can tell it's not doing particularly well, 30% off. They've already had to drop the price. But again, another publicity stunt about just to promote this ridiculous autobiography. Surprising how much of the news is now done with these short video clips. So yeah, as we said, the real reason. I'm not going to play any audio on this video though, because that is when you get hit with copyright. I just thought we would indulge in the real reason why Harry and Meghan got evicted and were left homeless and had to go down to the local council and try and get emergency accommodation. Oh no, wait, that didn't happen. They just went to one of their other many mansions. Is it just me that thinks Harry looks like a waxwork, well, and Meghan for that matter, in these pictures. I wouldn't be surprised if this was Madame Two Swords. Right, why did they really get asked to vacate? And here is their blatant little advert for the book, where they've claimed it comes because of the accusations he made. The Queen's consort being the villain and leaking stories to the press. Yeah, no, none of that happened. This is all just publicity stunts. When the monarchy move around, they not only move around their titles, but, well, there's some cracking images going on the screen here. I'm not sure if you can see the teeth of Camilla Parker Bowles, or whatever she's now called, but they are clearly just a set of overlays. Look how ridiculous Charles's face looks here. Again, all these look like waxwork images. Midnight says the convid is snake venom. It is certainly not something I will ever be convinced to follow that course of treatment. In fact, there's very few treatment courses I think I would ever be prepared to follow now. But anyway, but yeah, thanks for sharing that. Jeff Gashead, good to see you in the live chat. Thanks for joining us. And you've got MRSA on the from an operation, the only way to get in the hospital. Wow, I'm sorry to hear that, as that is meant to be an absolutely horrific illness. So I hope you're alright. But yeah, you're right. MRSA is one of those, they call them hospital superbugs, because for some reason that seems to be the only place they get picked up. Perhaps they're selling it to them in the form of treatment. But anyway, let's find out the real reason Harry got evicted. Started on January the 11th. It was the last straw. Harry was well aware how Camilla would be a red line for his father, and he crossed it with flagrant disregard. So he slagged off Camilla. He slagged off his stepmom. But they've been given absolutely ages. They've got all of April and most of May to move out, so they're not exactly in a hurry. Yeah. Again, once these, now we've got King Charles, it means other royals take on different roles and different titles, and it also means they get access to different accommodation. Goodness me, Meghan's shoulders look ridiculously wide in that shot. And it will be offered to the disgraced Duke Prince Andrew. Wow, I bet you get a lot of that would be a popular place to be seen, hey? Yeah, I wanted, just because we touched upon it on my last stream, although I didn't go into great detail, I did want to revisit that story. We could watch rubbish about Harry and Meghan all night, but we're not going to, because I am going to be finishing this stream in the next 5 to 10 minutes. But they're apparently in serious trouble again. Yeah, Adam says they had to visit Justin Trudeau to try and get some accommodation while they're in trouble with not Oprah but someone else. Right. I hope this video can be seen alright. Samantha claimed that Meghan lied about her childhood. Yeah, everything we hear about this couple, rags to royalty. Not exactly. She was a Hollywood actress. And by the way, look at this person in the background of that shot. I swear I see an Adam's apple. Oh, that's not going to work. Right. Okay, any other subjects we're going to touch on before we close for the night? Yeah, MRSA. I would be curious to know how that can exist exclusively in a hospital. And I guess while they would tell us it is a condition that gets passed around from one person to another, I wonder if it might be coming through another source. Clostridium difficile is a type of bacteria. Nice. It's resistant to several widely used antibiotics, almost like a, well, they used to call them super bugs or super viruses, didn't they? Well, they had some sort of like name such as that. And it will give you sores or boils on the skin, nasty. Ooh, swollen red painful bumps, fluid or pus filled bumps. Sounds a bit like leprosy actually, doesn't it? Except I think that goes white rather than red. Fever, chills, low blood pressure, severe headaches and shortness of breath. And it only affects people that goes into hospital. What do all of those people probably have in common? They've all taken their treatment. They've all taken their antibiotics. Their trimethoprim, sulfamethoxolazole. They've been drinking up their minoxidil and doxycycline. Which then causes more custom for the hospital. These hospitals are of course businesses, and where would they be if no one was catching their superbugs? So they'll make them resistant to several antibiotics. Again, antibiotics, not something I would ever voluntarily take. The only time I've ever actually felt close to death was when I was put on a course of antibiotics. Well, a couple of times it's happened in my life, and boy did I feel miserable. Both times it was for like an abscess I had where I had when I was a kid I bit down on a sweet really hard and it caused an infection in my gum, and yeah, they put me on penicillin and I couldn't even keep it down. And then a similar thing happened in my my late teens, and again antibiotics, and I felt like death. So on the other hand, whilst the infection was unpleasant and even painful, it was nothing compared to being put on those. They said you can get MRSA just by handling things in a store. Okay, but yeah, I don't think I'm mixing it up. I remember at the start of BS19, as it were, I knew a few people that worked in hospitals at the time, all of which had some interesting things to say on it. A relative of someone said that it was their son actually, had said the people were picking that up in the hospital. It was the main place people were coming down with BS19. That is just an anecdote of an employee of a hospital. Midnight says colloidal silver. I will look that up before we finish. To be honest, I will always trust my God-given immune system over any, yeah. I know sometimes we may not be in a fortunate as a position, but a controversial alternative medicine, so they'll be selling it in Holland and Barrettson, It advocates claims that it's an effective treatment for all sorts of infections and diseases, ranging from the common cold to cancer. Actually, I do remember someone... No, I'm not sure if they were talking about colloidal silver, actually. It does sound familiar, though. I remember I remember it being recommended to me in the past when I talked about infections, I think. Along with beeswax instead of toothpaste. Now, I don't know... Yeah, they say if ever you get a problem with your teeth, just bite down on beeswax or something. Can't say I've ever tried it. Cannot say I'm recommending it, but that was just the same person that mentioned to me colloidal silver also mentioned beeswax. Just putting that out there. Midnight says it's a good antibiotic. See, again, antibiotics have never agreed with me. Maybe this is something that isn't horrific. Historically, silver was used as an all-purpose remedy for various infections and illnesses due to its antimicrobial properties. In fact, the earliest recorded use of silver as a treatment was in 1500 BC. However, it was quickly abandoned in the early 20th century, so it lasted 3,500 years then, until the 20th century, when antibiotics were discovered and found to be more effective than silver in the treatment of health conditions and diseases. No, what they mean is, in the 20th century they found a way to market a vessel of juice and tell you it was effective, rather than this, I guess it was freely available, colloidal silver. But it started to regain popularity, with advocates claiming that it can replace antibiotics or other medical therapies. A small number of people go as far to assert that it helps with conditions like Lyme disease, tuberculosis and HIV, even cancer. However, no research supports these claims. Has any research been done into the claims? Who knows? 3,500 years it was in use. 20th century, abandon it. We know better now. Interesting. A bit like, say another belief or knowledge, say of a creator, for example, held, and then all of a sudden, modern day, we all know better now. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. By the way, I am in no way giving anyone any medical advice. Trust your own judgment. Don't trust me for medical advice, because you'll never get it here, and that will be a quick way for my videos to get removed if it would even appear that I'm giving that sort of advice. So just sharing some anecdotes and opinions, and that is all I do on this live stream. If that is hopefully what you guys come here for, and I appreciate you who do take the time to tune in, especially those of you in the live chat. The Price of Adam, Jeff Gashead, Midnight Scribbler, KG, Nathan Oakley, and Nicholas Pitts, who have all taken the time to say hello. Thanks ever so much. If you want to do so before we wind up for the evening, then that would be appreciated. Otherwise, I'm going to leave you with the video we were supposed to watch at the intermission. I would also like to just make the request, if anyone feels like hitting the thumbs up button before you leave tonight, that'd be massively appreciated. If you want to catch my future live streams, I do shorter and more to the point ones in the week. Hit the subscribe button, and if you want to share on social media, again, that is hugely appreciated. I would also like to take the time to thank Linda Mack, Skeptic936 and Nathan Oakley for their generous contribution and support to this channel, and invite anyone that wants to check me out over on Patreon to either scan the QR code or just go to patreon.com/bzines or scan the QR code, whatever works for you, or even just hit the thumbs up button. That is always appreciated. Either way, I massively appreciate you tuning in, and especially you in the live chat. Right, we're gonna say over and out in a minute, and if I'm not back before, I'll certainly be back on Thursday with a Bobsy Hour. I am planning to do more than like one of them in the midweek. We'll see how it goes. KG, glad to hear you enjoyed it. And Price of Adam, thanks for your many contributions to the chat and the suggestions. I'm just having a look at what Jeff said about who's it said they got MRSA. Yeah, it was and yeah, apparently they used it. Right, yeah, glad you enjoyed the show, people. Jeff says, yeah, had to have an op. It was either that or have an op every 2 years. Wow. Okay. I'm actually, yeah, let me just catch up on the chat, because I do invite you to comment, and then it would be a bit rude of me not to have a quick read of it before we finish. The Price of Adam is putting some codes in the chat. 11123. Okay, just a joke. Right, okay, thanks guys for tuning in. And I hope you make it to the next stream. I will leave you with a video that I did in... Where was it? I was meant to be playing this one on the intermission, but I didn't. So I'll leave you with the video from September 2022, our ITV, Bait in the Audience. When that finishes, we will be closing out. So, okay, I'm going to say over and out now. Thanks for joining us. Have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you in the midweek if you can make it there. Oh, the Price of Adam says it was the day the Prince said he was kicked out. Yeah, they certainly love their numbers, do they not? I didn't realise it was 11, 12... Sorry. First... 12, 11... Sorry, my head's not... I guess there's a 0 in there somewhere, because it's missing a digit according to my numbers. But yeah, good point. They do certainly like their numbers. I didn't actually, notice you were referencing that. My apologies. Okay, I do find if I don't end, I start babbling incessantly for ages. So to spare you of that, and to save my voice, I'm going to say thanks for tuning in. Good night, everyone. Enjoy the intermission. The playing out video. And we are done. Take care and good night.
But I'm worried that microchip they put in you with your COVID vaccine's malfunctioning.
Yeah, get in there.